Today we're going to talk about the 1831 journey to Missouri with the first missionaries that went there. At other times we'll talk about some of these other journeys in Missouri. But in 1831, it took Joseph Smith and those that were with him about 25 days to get to Missouri from Kirtland, which is about 50 miles a day. So this map just kind of shows where this was and how they journeyed there. So we're going to follow them on that journey in 1831. His brother Hiram was also going on a mission, but he was going up to Michigan, across Lake Erie, and then coming down this way while Joseph was going across this way. They planned to meet right here at the Allred settlement and enjoyed the time there. There was about 25 wagons, and they had to cross canals. It was 322 miles from there to Cincinnati, or about 46 miles a day. They didn't have 25 wagons, they just had to go by wagon or canals or stagecoach as they made this journey. Part of this journey was 517 miles down the Ohio River from Cincinnati to Cairo. Which would get them about 60 miles a day. It's 180 river miles up the Mississippi River on a steamboat from Cairo to St. Louis. So when they took a steamboat, the Ohio River took them way south of St. Louis, and then they had to transfer to get on a steamboat to get up to St. Louis. From July 4th to 14th, Joseph said he walked 270 miles to Independence with brothers Harris, Phelps, Partridge, and Co. The rest of the company came by water a few days later. So they're averaging about 27 miles a day walking. They're following the Boone Slick Trail across 7 counties in Missouri. The year before, the 1830 census said that there's about 50,000 people along this trail they're following. It's called the Boone Slick Trail, named after Daniel Boone. And as you can see, it follows the river on the north side of the Missouri River until they get over here and cross at Arrow Rock. Each of these counties have about this many people in the census. 14,000, 4, 3, 4. And of course they're often going through the county seat. This is Warrenton in Warren County, on through Columbia, Missouri. So there's a few people along the trail. Once they cross at Arrow Rock, they're going to be following what's called the Santa Fe Trail that began in 1821 and covers 6 counties, 3 on this side of the river and 3 on this side. And these are well known in church history. Jackson County had about 2,800 people. Clay County across the river north had 2,600. Ray County was larger and had 5,300. Lafayette County with Lexington, about 3,000. So you can see the number of people that were in these areas when they came through. It took them about 24 days to get to Independence, and they spent about 24 days in Independence. The first day was a Sunday, the first Sabbath. They were in Kansas teaching, or Indian Territory, Kansas as we now know it. On Wednesday, July 20th, Section 57 was given about the temple site being west of the courthouse. The second Sabbath was the 24th of July. The day after that, the Colesville branch arrived. And they had traveled from Colesville, New York to Kirtland, Ohio, and thought they were going to be staying there for a while, but that didn't work out, and so they were asked to move. About 60 people in that branch, the Knight family and others of their family, had come into Independence. By the third Sabbath, they had been there a couple weeks, and on Monday, August 1st, Section 58 was given. It refers to Sidney Rigdon dedicating a temple spot. On August 2nd, Joseph and 12 men moved the first log over in Caw Township of Independence, or Jackson County, just west of Independence. Caw Township is in Kansas City in our day. So on Tuesday, they were starting first log home there and school and place to gather for the saints. And the Colesville saints lived over in that area. On August 3rd, which was a Wednesday, the stones were laid for a temple by Joseph and a group of men and others that had gathered. And on Sunday, August 7th, Polly Knight from the Colesville branch had passed away. Her health had not been good, and she was a faithful lady that finally got to Independence and with her family. And she and her husband Joseph have many faithful descendants in the church today. But Section 59 was given, and she was the first saint that passed away in Jackson County. On Monday, August 8th, Section 60 was given, where the Lord asked some of the missionaries to return speedily to Kirtland. And this is a comment on Sunday, July 17th. There were about 1,200 whites, blacks, and Indians in Jackson County. Joseph Oliver Martin, Joseph Coe, Ziba Peterson, and William Phelps, and Joshua Lewis, a convert in Caw Township, had gone over there to teach, and revelations were given in Kansas, or the Indian Territory. Oliver gave the opening prayer at that meeting. William Phelps was asked to speak. Joseph Coe and Ziba Peterson were asked to give their testimony, so it was quite a meeting over there in the Indian Territory with the Native Americans that had gathered. Earlier, the missionaries had spent some time with them in January of 1831, and then Joseph was there in the summertime. This is a picture of a monument of Joseph and others carrying a log to begin the foundation of the first church building in Jackson County, in Caw Township. On August 3rd, the temple stones were laid, and these are some of the stones that the community, or the Church of Christ, has in their museum there on the temple lot. The Church of Christ temple lot are wonderful people that we got to know, and we enjoyed getting to know Randy and going to church with them. But this is the southeast corner of the temple, 1831. And in the 1920s, when this church group decided to build a temple on the temple lot, they found these stones when they excavated down to build a foundation. That was never built, but these are some of the stones that they found. In June 1833, this plat of the city of Zion arrived, and in it refers to filling up the whole world in the last days, and let every man live in the city, for this is the city of Zion. So in 1831 to 1833, the saints were gathering in Jackson County and believed that they could build the city of Zion and build a temple and other buildings there. On Monday, August 8th, lots 75 and 76 were purchased. Half a block south of the courthouse square, Edward Parchers bought this for $10 from Garnet Hensley. and a lot next to it for $50 from James Gray. Lot 76 had a structure, maybe a brick home. Levi Hancart and Joseph Knight Jr. worked on this area in Lot 76. Is where the court documents said there was damage to a print shop there. So after spending a few weeks in Independence and around Jackson County and into the Indian Territory, Joseph Smith decides to make a journey back to Kirtland. This will take him from August 9th to the 27th, about 18 days. And their first day was from Independence, and they stayed at Fort Osage. They got in canoes here and went on a canoe down to Fort Osage. Fort Osage was a spot designated by the Lewis and Clark expedition in 1804 through 1806 to build a fort that was eventually built after they returned and was in operation. There's a nice historical landmark there and a museum that you can go through. That's where Joseph was on August 9th as he left Independence with the other missionaries. It's about 25 miles in canoes to get down there that day, and getting in the Missouri River in August on a canoe as missionaries to return home. This is a drawing of Fort Osage. It sits up on a hill above the Missouri River, and the U.S. government operated that from 1808 up to about 1825, just before Independence became a city and in Jackson County was organized. So that's where they would have come down the river and stopped and had a place to eat and rest before their next journey. Being in a canoe on the Missouri River was not easy. They were going downstream, but there were logs and other challenges, and it would cause difficulties with the saints as they traveled, the missionaries. On Wednesday, August 10th, they were probably about 30 miles downriver to Lexington, the county seat of Lafayette County, which again is built up on a high bluff above the Missouri River, and Lexington was started in 1822. So when they were there in 1831, it had been there almost 10 years. On Thursday morning, they left Lexington and made their way down to what we know as Miami, Missouri in our day. DeWitt, Missouri is just on the north side of the river. And when Joseph Smith left on Thursday, August 11th from Lexington, he may or may not have known that Ziba Peterson, one of the first 4 missionaries that had come in 1831, was getting married to one of the converts. And that was in Lexington, and he was on his way downriver on the way home from his mission. This is a picture of that area of Missouri, Miami, Missouri, where they came on the 11th of August, 1831. And on Friday, August 12th, as they were getting ready to leave, Section 61 was given, which recommended that some of the missionaries journey by land and the others would stay on the river and go by canoe on down to St. Louis. So Section 61 is interesting that Joseph and 6 others would walk 24 miles to Old Charlton, which is now Glasgow, Missouri. It was started in Howard County. There were 4 groups. Joseph, Oliver, and Sidney walked to Fayette, Missouri. Ezra Booth, Frederick Williams and Peter Whitmer Jr. and Joseph Coe went down the Missouri in canoes. Samuel Smith and Reynolds Cahoon walked to Columbia as companions. And Sidney Gilbert and William Phelps went in haste, which is repeated 4 times. Maybe that means they went by steamboat to Cincinnati to buy a printing press and other things that they were asked to do. Sidney Gilbert would eventually open a store the next year in Independence, and William Phelps was asked to start the printing process, printing shop, and he was going to get a printing press in Cincinnati and bring it back to Independence. This is me standing on the Missouri River in Glasgow, or very near where Section 62 was given in Chariton County. And it's in this area where Joseph met his brother Hiram and John Murdoch, and they were on their way to Jackson County. Hiram and John had gone up to Detroit and down a different way, and were still on their way to Independence, Jackson County, Missouri, and Joseph had finished and was on his way home. This may have been an unexpected meeting from their point of view, but the Spirit guided them to be at the same place at the same time, even though they were traveling in opposite directions. Section 62, verse 6, the Lord said, "I, the Lord, have brought you together, that the faithful among you should be preserved and rejoice together in Missouri." So I'm sure it was a wonderful meeting between Joseph and Hiram, and it's that way in our lives. We're often guided by the Spirit to meet people, loved ones, friends, or others that God has prepared to meet us on our journey of life. So Joseph continued on to Kirtland, and Hiram and John Murdoch continued on to Independence. John Murdoch had been sick and actually fell off his horse at one point, and took him a while to get to Independence, but they had stopped in what was now known as the Salt River Settlement, or the Allred branch, and met some wonderful people, the Allred and Ivy and other families that would join the church and be a stopping place for many years when the saints were coming to Missouri. Up near Paris, Missouri, the county seat of Monroe County. After spending the Sabbath together, Joseph and 2 others walked 12 miles east to Fayette to catch a stagecoach, 28 miles to Columbia, and then the final 126 miles to St. Louis. And so Fayette, Missouri is where Joseph traveled to. It's in just 12 miles from Columbia, which is a major part on the I-70 freeway. They are often taking a stagecoach. Others were on a steamboat. Others were in a canoe. Of course, others used wagons to get back and forth to Missouri. In the next few days, they took a stagecoach about 350 miles from St. Louis to Cincinnati. And they would have gone through the main area over to Cincinnati. From Cincinnati, they traveled about 270 miles to Kirtland, Ohio, on a steamboat. So you can see Cincinnati here, and they're going up along there. So they left Independence on August 9th. We're back in Kirtland 18 days later, about almost 900 miles, or about 50 miles a day by stagecoach or canoe or walking. So his missionary journey was from June 19th to August 27th, 69 days, about 1,300 miles. 25 days to get to the mission field, 24 days in Independence in the mission, and then 18 days to get home. So just over 2,000 miles in this 1831 journey of Joseph Smith. Hiram, on the other hand, took from June 14th to August 22nd, about 900 miles. They were not making as much progress and were often stopping to preach along the way. So they were making about 25 miles a day, or about 13 miles a day compared to Joseph's 25 miles a day. And Russell Ballard said this about them and us: all of your missionaries need to devote themselves to this great cause and practice the principles for success found in Preach My Gospel. All of us, by following the example of Joseph and Hiram, can protect, support, teach, and love one another as missionary companions with the same dedication as they did on their mission. If any of you or your missionaries face a day of discouragement, may I suggest that you remember the Independence, Richmond, Liberty, Carthage jails, and there you will find the power of the Savior, just as they did. So, our church leaders today mentioned that we as missionaries will have our own challenges, just like the missionaries in 1830.